Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here with your 2021 AoE Farming Report. In this video, we're going to be looking at the farming rates of various civilizations in Age of Empires 2, including the newest civilizations that both have something special helping out their farming. For all of my testing to get these numbers, I used 20 farmers for 7 minutes. I decided for this time I'm not going to use perfectly placed farms only right beside the town center or a mill, as I thought adding a second layer of farms might give a more realistic idea of how good some of the bonuses are in practice, where farms are often doubled up. Things like more carry capacity and faster movement don't add much to ideally placed farms, but start to have a larger impact as the distance increases. I also extrapolated based on the 7 minutes to how long the farm would take to be exhausted, and then corrected for a 15-second farm reseed at the end, so farm reseeding is factored into the final number. As a baseline for a generic civilization, with no upgrades at all, farmers gathered a little over 18 food per minute. Theoretically, with near perfect placement, you'd get something closer to 19.5, so there are other numbers you could get depending on the setup. If we factor in reseed time, we get a little under 18 food per minute for each farmer. With wheelbarrow and horse collar, we get around a 15% improvement on top of that, which is in line with what I found before of around a 13 to 14% improvement from wheelbarrow, and the effect of horse collar, meaning you reseed less often, also gives a tiny boost as well. Finally, with handcart and heavy plow together, we get a nice little bump to around 23.5 food per minute. With longer distance farms like this, handcart is incredibly important, and most of the farmers here are reaching the theoretical cap of 24 food per minute that the farm actually produces. So that's the baseline for generic civ and the standard effect size of different upgrades, so now let's see how those numbers change for other civilizations. We'll start with the Aztecs, who have +3 carry capacity on their villagers. That was recently nerfed down from +5, but they're still great farmers overall. I found they're around 10% better than a generic civilization before wheelbarrow, 5% better after wheelbarrow, though just 1% better with handcart. Considering their bonus is to carry more with each trip, it makes sense that an improvement from 10 to 13 in Dark Age is more significant than going from 21 to 24 carry capacity in Imperial. In fact, it's enough to make them the best farmers in Dark Age except for Khmer. Next up, we have the Slavs, with a civ bonus for 10% faster farming. In practice, with this setup, I found it was about +9% before wheelbarrow, +10% after, and almost +11% with handcart and heavy plow. Unlike the Aztecs, whose farming bonus drops off over time, we can see the Slavs continue to get the full effect through all stages of the game. In fact, they end up with by far the best farmers in Imperial Age. That's particularly nice for the Slavs, given how often you'll be making either infantry or cavalry in the late game. Moving on, let's take a look at the Khmer. A little under a year ago, they gained a bonus that their farmers no longer need to drop off food at mills or town centers, so there's no such thing as an inefficient layout for them. To offset that, their raw farming rate has been set a bit slower than for other civilizations, though not having to walk to drop-off points is still a massive net benefit. Currently, I found before wheelbarrow, they farmed 16% faster than a generic civ, making them the best farmers before wheelbarrow at the moment, though in reality, it's probably a little closer to 10% faster if we compare to perfectly placed farms. After wheelbarrow, I found they're around 11 or 12% faster than a generic civ, so a bit less of an advantage in the mid-game. And after handcart, I found they're only about 2 or 3% better. Another civilization that seems like they should be good on paper is the Berbers, with 10% faster moving villagers. Faster movement seems like it should be useful for farming, both for moving around the farm more efficiently, but also when walking to a drop-off point. Even with some double-layered farms though, it ended up just being a 3% increase in Dark Age, falling off to 2% and then 1% with wheelbarrow and handcart respectively. Like we've seen a couple of times already for Aztecs and Khmer, the advantage peaks early on and disappears as more upgrades come in, though in this case the effect is never really that strong to begin with. Another civilization I like to keep an eye on is the Mayans. Mayans have always been uniquely poor at farming, possibly a result of how their longer-lasting resources bonus is applied to farms, though at this point it seems intentionally a bit lower for balance. Even with slower farmers, they've always had a great economy from extra resources on sheep, boar, and berries, and usually aren't hurting for food too much. I found they're currently about 2% worse in Dark Age, 5% worse after wheelbarrow, and again about 2% worse after handcart. Just to be clear, that doesn't mean wheelbarrow is lowering their collection rate, but simply that they're not getting as big of a bump as other civilizations do. Getting away from food collection, let's take a look at one of the new civs, the Burgundians. They get all of their economic upgrades in age earlier, which leads to a separate discussion of which upgrades are actually worth getting that early. The relevant feature for our purposes right now though is instead their unique tech, allowing farms to generate gold in addition to the usual food income. It turns out the amount of gold generated actually depends on upgrades. For unupgraded villagers, it starts as about 0.5 gold per minute, and then increases by 15 or 16% with feudal upgrades, and another 17% on top of that with castle age upgrades. Since it's a Castle Age unique tech, you'll probably already have those researched, and assuming that's the case, around 44 farmers would generate the same amount of gold as a relic. On the surface, that might sound broken as their farms are generating infinite gold, but other civilizations with better farming rates could theoretically sell their excess at the market to convert it to gold as well. It turns out Burgundians are still the best gold generators in that situation at about 3.9 gold per minute with each farmer using that strategy without guilds, and 4.6 gold per minute with guilds. That's better than the 3.6 for a Slav farmer and 3.2 to 3.9 for a regular civilization, depending on if they have guilds or not. There's definitely an advantage for Burgundians, but it's not as broken as you might assume at first glance. So those are all the direct farming rate modifiers, but what about other bonuses that involve less reseeding? If you're reseeding less often, there should be more time for farming and a higher collection rate as a result. Starting with the Chinese, they have a team bonus for plus 45 food per farm. In that case, it starts off as a 0.5% increase in farming rate over time and decreases from there to 0.3% and 0.2% as more upgrades come in. Basically, the primary benefit is the wood savings and making it easier to get farming upgrades before too many farms expire, and the actual collection rate itself isn't really affected. Similarly, we have everyone's favorite team bonus with the Incas, giving double construction speed on farms. Basically, they go from 15 seconds to 7.5 seconds to build. This is pretty easy to assess theoretically, and it should add about 1.3% in Dark Age, 1% with feudal upgrades, 0.8% with Castle Age upgrades, and around 0.5% after crop rotation. That's basically nothing, though that said, Incas are already consistently a top 5 1v1 civ, so I wouldn't advocate for improving it. The Sicilians have a slightly different take on a farming bonus as well, with double the effect for mill upgrades. Again, more food per farm means saving wood in the long run, but you might also think that saved reseed time leads to faster farmers as well. It turns out you're theoretically getting a 0.5% increase in farming rate with horse collar and an extra 0.8% after heavy plow and crop rotation. That's on farms with 925 food, which would need to be reseeded about once every 39 minutes of game time. Obviously, the long-term wood savings are the important benefit here. But what about Sicilians with an Inca and Chinese ally, who would end up with 420 more food than a generic fully upgraded farm, plus the double construction speed? It turns out even in that case, they only end up being 1.2% more efficient at farming than a generic civ, though you are converting wood to food at an incredible 1 to 15 ratio. One thing I was curious about though is that Sicilians a month before release were intended to have a different bonus of adding +1 to farmers' carry capacity with each farming upgrade. Would that have been better or worse than what they actually ended up getting? It turns out it would have been a bit better for gather rate after horse collar and wheelbarrow, but slightly worse in the late game. It would basically have turned into the Aztecs carry capacity bonus in Imperial Age, which as we saw doesn't really have that large of an impact at reasonable distances. Of course, the bonus they ended up getting has much more upside in wood savings by cutting down on how often farms are reseeded. Overall, I think this switch was a net positive for the Sicilian economy. And of course, just to mention them quickly so you don't think I forgot, there are other farming related bonuses, like Teuton's cheaper farms, Vietnamese farm upgrades not costing wood, and Franks getting farm upgrades for free. It's easy to argue that while they don't directly impact farming rates like the others on the list, at times they're more significant bonuses than some of the ones mentioned. But there you have it for the 2021 farming rates comparison. I really didn't intend for this to be an annual series when I made a similar video last year, but farms continue to be a popular way for the devs to tweak civ balance and design. That's all for this one though. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.